There comes a moment in a man's life when the veil tears, when all that once seemed radiant turns to ash, when the laughter of the crowd sounds hollow, and even the pleasures that once intoxicated now taste of dust. It is then that he begins to see, and to see is to suffer. Consciousness, my friend, is not a gift. It is a wound that never heals. For to awaken is to separate oneself from the animal that sleeps in peace. The beast knows no reflection, and thus no despair. But man, cursed with thought, stands divided against himself. The first act of wisdom is isolation, not the chosen solitude of a monk, but the enforced solitude of the awakened. The mind, once opened, cannot return to the warmth of ignorance. One cannot unsee the machinery of desire once it has been revealed. You will find that the world begins to recoil from you, not because you have wronged it, but because your eyes, unclouded, disturb its dream. Men love illusions more than truth, for illusions keep the pain at bay. The moment you cease to participate in the grand masquerade of self-deception, you are cast out. You become foreign, alien, a mirror the crowd cannot bear to look into. I have often said, to live wisely is to suffer consciously. To see the will that blind, ceaseless striving that drives every creature is to recognize that existence is not joy, but compulsion. We live because we must, not because we should. And yet man decorates this compulsion with poetry. He calls it love, ambition, purpose. He believes he is free, but freedom is merely the will choosing among its own chains. When I first understood this, I felt a kind of death within me. The world lost its flavor. The music of youth turned into noise. Every human pursuit revealed itself as a circle, the runner endlessly chasing his own shadow. And I could no longer run. Solitude did not come to me as a choice. It came as a necessity, the only environment where truth could breathe. The man who begins to think deeply finds himself expelled from the banquet of life. The laughter of others becomes unbearable, their trivialities suffocating. It is not contempt that separates him, it is clarity. You must understand this. Clarity isolates, and isolation refines. From this point onward, you will walk alone. And though the world will call it loneliness, I call it initiation. For solitude is not emptiness. It is the furnace in which the false self burns away. Listen carefully. The more you awaken, the fewer companions you will have. This is not punishment. It is purification. The masses live as one organism, their consciousness fused by imitation. They think alike, desire alike, suffer alike. They believe this uniformity is safety, but it is merely shared blindness. To see the world as it is, without consolation, without hope, is to tear yourself from that organism. You will no longer feel at home among men. But this homelessness is the birthplace of the soul. Do not resist it. Do not attempt to reconcile yourself with a world that feeds on distraction. Let yourself drift from the shore. Let the familiar die, for every step away from the crowd is a step toward truth. There is a terrible beauty in this distance. When you are no longer intoxicated by belonging, you begin to see the architecture of existence, the repetition of striving, the comedy of human desire, the quiet indifference of nature. And then, in a moment of chilling lucidity, you realize you are utterly alone. But do not tremble. This aloneness is not your enemy. It is your only companion that does not lie. The fool seeks company to escape himself. The wise man embraces solitude to understand himself. Yes, it hurts. Every truth worth knowing is purchased in pain. Every illusion you discard takes a piece of your heart with it. But in that void where illusions die, something silent begins to grow. A clarity that does not need comfort. A peace that does not require happiness. It is the peace of seeing. I once watched a bird pecking at its reflection in the water, mistaking itself for another. Man is no different. He fights the image of his own desires. He cannot rest, because his hunger is infinite. He is at war with the very will that animates him. To walk alone is to step outside that war. It is to become the observer rather than the participant. But this observation costs you everything you once loved. You will mourn your old self. You will miss the intoxication of ignorance, the laughter of the naive, the sweetness of believing that life has purpose. These were your opiates. Without them, reality feels raw, unbearable. Yet endurate. Endure until you can breathe again in the cold air of truth. For this is where evolution begins. Not the evolution of species, but of spirit. The first man who dared to think, who questioned the gods, who looked into the abyss and did not look away, he walked alone. And because he did, the world moved forward, even as he was despised. To walk alone is to walk ahead, not in triumph, but in exile. And yet, in that exile lies the seed of greatness. The world worships those who shine, but it is the shadows that birth the light. Every philosopher, every artist, every saint, they were all rejected, forgotten, misunderstood, until time, that slow judge, vindicated their solitude. I tell you this, not to console, but to prepare. You will not find peace among men who sleep. Your peace will come only when you cease to beg for belonging. Do not seek understanding from the crowd. They will only mirror back their fear. They cannot comprehend the one who walks in shadow, for shadow reveals their own blindness. Yes, you will be misunderstood. They will call your silence arrogance, your detachment coldness, your clarity cruelty. Let them, for they cannot see beyond their reflection. The truth is not democratic. It does not bend to comfort the many. It stands alone, as you must. I have lived long enough to see that solitude is the natural climate of genius. It is the laboratory of the soul, where suffering distills into insight. Do not rush to escape it. Let the silence carve you hollow. Let it strip you of every false identity until only essence remains. Then, and only then, will you know what it means to live without illusion. You will find a strange beauty in this emptiness, a beauty untouched by need. It is not the beauty of abundance, but of absence, the kind of beauty that belongs to a barren landscape under a dying sun. Silent vast eternal. This is the beauty of truth. And if you can bear to stand in it without turning away, you will have become something the world no longer recognizes. A free soul, not happy, not comfortable, but awake. Soft pause, the sound of distant wind. To walk alone is to walk ahead. But remember, ahead does not mean above. It means deeper beneath the surface, beyond illusion. Most will never follow. They will laugh, they will pity, they will forget. But their laughter fades. Their pity turns to dust. And the one who walks alone continues through shadow, through silence, through the long winter of the world. For it is only in that winter that truth flowers. You believe that you live because you want to, but I tell you, you live because you must. Behind every heartbeat, every breath, every thought, there moves something older than you, something blind, something without reason. It is what I have called the will, the dark core of being, the pulse that drives every creature toward life, and through life, toward suffering. Look around you. Every form that breathes, or crawls, or dreams, is enslaved to this same force. The ant building its endless tunnels, the lover burning in obsession, the soldier running into death, all are puppets of the will, even you, especially you. The will is not moral. It does not seek happiness, nor wisdom, nor peace. It seeks only continuation, the repetition of existence. It is a hunger without object. It devours simply to keep devouring. It creates life only to consume it again. And we are its instruments. The tragedy of man is that he alone knows it. The animal suffers, but it does not ask why. Man suffers and asks, and in asking, multiplies his pain. To think is to feel the chain. To understand is to suffer twice. First from the wound itself, then from the knowledge that it will never heal. Do you see now? Pleasure is not the opposite of pain. It is merely the brief cessation of it, a momentary silence before the hunger returns. Desire is a contract we sign with torment. We yearn, we strive, we reach, and when we finally grasp what we sought, we find that its sweetness was only the perfume of anticipation. The lover, after the embrace, feels the emptiness return. The conqueror, after victory, feels the void expand. The artist, after creation, faces the same abyss that birthed his work. What we call fulfillment is nothing but the exhaustion of desire. And exhaustion feels like peace only to those who have forgotten what peace is. Listen, life is not tragedy because of death. It is tragedy because of the futility between birth and death. The will pushes all things forward. And yet, toward what? Toward decay. Toward dissolution. Toward the repetition of the same suffering in new forms. I once watched a moth batter itself against a flame. Over and over, it returned, drawn by the very light that would destroy it. Man is no different. He calls it passion, purpose, faith, coup. But it is the same intoxication, the same blindness before the inevitable pain. This is the secret no one wishes to hear. Life persists because it does not know how to stop. The will does not care for joy or sorrow. It only moves as fire burns, as waves rise and fall. To live is to be burned by it. You may clothe this torment in 1,000 noble words: ambition, love, creativity, destiny. But beneath them all, the same pulse beats: wanting, needing, chasing. And what is happiness, if not a brief anesthesia between two moments of desire? Most men never notice this cycle. They are too busy running. They mistake motion for meaning and exhaustion for purpose. They climb mountains not to reach the top, but to escape the silence of standing still. It is only when one stops, when one dares to sit in the stillness of awareness, that the full weight of existence crushes down. You feel it now, don't you? That strange ache beneath your pleasures. That quiet panic when the world falls silent. That is the will whispering, "Feed me." It does not matter what you feed it. Gold or glory, lust or love, belief or knowledge. It consumes all with the same indifference. The poet starves to express beauty. The miser starves to hoard wealth. The saint starves to serve God. All kneel before the same invisible master. To the will, there is no good or evil, only fuel. I have seen the brightest minds crushed beneath their own striving. They mistook thought for freedom, but thought is merely the will reflecting upon itself. Even our pursuit of wisdom is another form of wanting. And yet, we cannot stop. We are condemned to desire. Even in renunciation, the will hides, for to want not to want is still to want. This is the perfect circle of suffering, the wheel that turns without mercy. Some break beneath it. Others distract themselves with noise. But a rare few, a very rare few, choose to look directly into the motion and see it for what it is. To those few, I say this: when you finally see that all desire breeds only its own continuation, something within you begins to quiet. The fever lessens. You no longer chase as before. And in that quiet, you encounter the first taste of freedom. Do not mistake this freedom for joy. It is not joy. It is detachment, the first breath outside the prison of will. You will feel it first as emptiness, then as peace, then as compassion, for in understanding your own bondage, you will see the bondage of all beings. Every cry, every hunger, every violence is the will devouring itself in endless ignorance. How can you hate the fool who suffers the same curse you bear? How can you condemn the beast when you too are beast in disguise? The philosopher who truly understands does not hate the world. He simply ceases to expect from it what it cannot give. He becomes still. He does not resist pain nor chase pleasure. He watches the play of life as one watches the wave, each rising only to fall. Yes, there is beauty in the waves, but not because they promise anything, because they move according to their nature. The same is true for life. When you cease demanding meaning from existence, existence begins to reveal a strange elegance, the simplicity of being without purpose. It is then you begin to see the world as it is, a restless dance of forms, a tragic comedy of desires chasing themselves into extinction. And in that seeing, suffering transforms. It does not disappear, for it cannot, but it loses its sting because you no longer mistake it for injustice. You see that the universe does not conspire against you. It simply is, indifferent, vast, silent. And in that silence, a new kind of strength is born, not the strength to conquer, but the strength to endure, without illusion. It is this endurance that separates the wise from the merely intelligent. Intelligence seeks solutions. Wisdom accepts reality. To live is to suffer. To suffer consciously, that is to live wisely. Once you understand this, you no longer plead for escape. You cease praying for exemption from pain. You learn instead to see beauty in the structure of tragedy itself. For even the scream has symmetry. Even despair has design. And perhaps that is enough. If there is any nobility in existence, it lies in bearing the unbearable with open eyes. To continue seeing, when every impulse in you begs for blindness, that is greatness. I have known few who possess it. The rest drown themselves in distraction, in intoxication, in the childish hope that life will one day make sense. But sense is a mirage. Purpose is a story told by the will to keep you running. Stop running. Stand still. Look. What do you see? A world devouring itself to survive. A man chasing meaning through endless pain. A sun that burns to light the sky, only to die in silence. This is existence. Cruel, beautiful, unjustified. Yet even in its cruelty, there is a kind of dark grace. The grace of inevitability. The grace of what cannot be otherwise. To see this and not despair, that is the philosopher's art. He who sees the machinery of suffering and still stands before it, unafraid, unresisting, becomes something rare, a consciousness liberated from the spell of becoming. He no longer says, I live. He says, life passes through me. He no longer says, I want. He says, the will wants through me. Quote, he no longer says, I suffer. He says, suffering reveals what I am. This is not resignation. It is lucidity. And lucidity, though it offers no joy, is the beginning of peace. Soft pause, sound fades to a low hum, like wind through hollow stone. So, my friend, when next you feel the ache of longing, when desire burns your chest with its familiar fever, do not curse it, but see it. Do not run from it. Do not name it love or ambition or destiny. Call it what it is, the will demanding its tribute. And then watch. Observe its movements. Do not resist. Do not indulge. Simply watch. You will find that the more you observe, the less power it holds. Desire thrives in darkness. It dies beneath the gaze of understanding. If you can learn to look without craving, to witness without naming, you will have taken your first step out of the prison. Freedom is not the end of suffering. It is the end of illusion. The will continues. The pain remains. But you will stand outside of it as the sky stands above the storm. And that is the only victory a human soul can ever claim. When I look upon the modern world, I see not progress, but panic, disguised as celebration. Man has not advanced. He has merely multiplied his distractions. The city glows at night like a fevered mind that cannot sleep. Every window burns with restless light, every street hums with movement, and in that constant motion hides a single fear, the fear of meeting oneself in silence. The ancient ascetic fled to the desert to escape temptation. The modern man flees into noise to escape thought. He calls it connection. I call it anesthesia. Observe him, scrolling through endless images, chasing shadows of approval, measuring his worth by reflection rather than depth. He believes he is communicating, but in truth, he is broadcasting his emptiness into a void of other emptinesses. Never before has humanity spoken so much and said so little. Never before has it been so surrounded and so alone. The marketplace has become the new cathedral, the screen, the new altar, the consumer, the new worshipper who sacrifices his time, his attention, his soul for symbols. Objects promise what gods once did: salvation, identity, belonging. A new phone, a new face, a new body, a new belief. Endless novelty to conceal the ancient wound. It is the same hunger, only dressed in plastic and light. The same will, translated into commerce. Désir mécanisé. The merchants of distraction are the new priests of comfort. They whisper, do not think, do not pause. Buy, scroll, believe, perform. And the people obey, grateful for the sedative. They call this civilization. I call it a well-decorated cage. The walls gleam with technology. The chains are woven from convenience. The prisoner no longer seeks escape, he fears it. To be comfortable is to be conquered. But modern man confuses comfort with freedom. He boasts of his choices, not seeing that every choice leads back to the same hunger. More wealth, more fame, more stimulation, the same endless repetition of desire. His gods are algorithms. His prayers are clicks. His heaven is visibility. He dreams of being seen, not of being known. And so he performs. All life becomes theater. Each smile rehearsed, each opinion borrowed. Authenticity dies under the weight of performance. To think for oneself has become the final rebellion. When I walk through the streets of your age, I see faces illuminated by screens, not by insight. Eyes trained outward, never inward. They fear boredom as if it were death, but boredom is simply the echo of the self they have abandoned. If only they could bear 5 minutes of silence, they would meet the truth they have been running from for centuries. But silence is unbearable to those who depend on noise for identity. And so, the world turns faster to drown out the sound of its own hollowness. Progress, they call it. But toward what? Machines grow smarter, souls grow smaller. Information multiplies, wisdom stalls. Communication accelerates, understanding collapses. They call it the Age of Enlightenment. Yet every light they build blinds them further to the darkness within. True enlightenment begins not with invention, but with renunciation. It is not the bright glare of screens, but the dim glow of a candle in solitude. I have seen the rise of nations, the fall of empires. I tell you, history does not move forward at circles. Each generation invents new tools to pursue the same delusions. The ancients built temples. You build towers of glass. The material changes, the will remains. The cult of happiness is your newest illusion. Think positive, they command, as if optimism could cancel tragedy. They sell joy like medicine and call sadness a disease. But to refuse sadness is to refuse depth. A life without sorrow is a life without consciousness. The obsession with happiness has turned man into a smiling corpse, animated but empty. He repeats affirmations as prayers, not realizing that truth needs no repetition. He chases experiences as if quantity could replace quality. He collects moments, not meanings. To the modern soul, depth is discomfort, and discomfort is heresy. Thus, mediocrity reigns, for nothing profound can grow in the soil of constant pleasure. The artist once created to reveal the abyss. Now he creates to entertain it. The philosopher once spoke to liberate minds. Now he performs for applause. Even rebellion has become fashionable, a commodity sold to those who wish to feel unique without paying the price of solitude. They wear dissent as ornament, but return to comfort by nightfall. The herd has learned to imitate the gestures of individuality. That is modern culture. Mass-produced uniqueness. They call it freedom of expression, but expression without thought is noise without music. How ironic, in your quest to be seen, you have become invisible to yourselves. There was a time when man turned to nature to remember his smallness. Now he builds cities to forget it. He has conquered the earth and lost the world. He stands upon a mountain of his own creation and still feels hollow, because the will is never full. It cannot be. And so, even progress becomes another mask for despair. Civilization is the will with better tools. Look at the eyes of your leaders, of your idols, of those you envy. Do you see peace there? No. You see the same hunger, refined, institutionalized, applauded. The successful man suffers just as the beggar does, only with better furniture. And the world calls this success. The irony of existence is that man's achievements only intensify his emptiness. He builds machines to extend his reach and discovers that infinity is a larger prison. He unlocks the secrets of matter, but cannot unlock the riddle of his own mind. He travels to the stars, yet cannot inhabit his own heart. All his progress is horizontal, none is vertical. He expands outward, never inward. He multiplies means never int. This is the tragedy of your civilization. You have conquered everything except yourselves, and now, surrounded by abundance, you die of thirst. I do not speak these words to mock you. I speak them because I have lived their truth. I too believed that intellect could redeem the world. That philosophy could awaken mankind from its dream. But the will is stronger than reason. It does not read, it does not listen, it hungers. And the masses will always follow the voice that feeds their hunger, not the one that exposes it. Thus, prophets are silenced, and salesmen are crowned. Society rewards those who soothe, not those who reveal. Truth has no market value. Delusion sells better. And yet, I find a strange pity for the crowd. For beneath their laughter, I hear the same cry that echoes through every age, the fear of meaninglessness. Even their pleasures are desperate prayers against the void. If only they knew, the void is not their enemy, it is their teacher. But they have filled it with advertisements, with slogans, with noise. They have turned the silence of eternity into a shopping mall. And still, beneath the music and the laughter, the silence waits. It waits for the one who will turn off the lights, step outside the theater, and face the night sky alone. That one will be hated, for he reminds the others that the show is not real. He ruins the illusion. He breaks the spell. But he also reclaims his soul. To walk away from the stage of the blind is to see the stars again. They burn with indifference, yes, but also with honesty. They promise nothing, deceive nothing. They simply are. That is the kind of truth man must learn to love again, the truth that does not flatter him. If the modern world wishes to be healed, it must first endure the sickness of truth. It must let its illusions die without replacement. No ideology, no technology, no progress can save you from yourself. Only consciousness can. But consciousness cannot be mass-produced. It blooms only in solitude. And solitude, as I have told you, is the price of awakening. A long pause. The imagined hum of the city fades into distant wind. So when the noise becomes unbearable, turn inward. Close the screens, the lights, the endless mirrors. Sit in the darkness you fear. Listen. What you hear is not emptiness. It is life stripped of ornament. It is existence as it is, without audience, without applause. Do not flee it. Do not seek to fill it. Let it speak. You will find that beneath the noise of the world, the silence of eternity still whispers. And it says, stop pretending. See, there is a moment after despair when the air changes. The storm has not passed, yet the wind no longer hurts. You are still drenched, but you have ceased to resist the rain. That is the beginning of clarity. It does not announce itself with trumpets. It arrives quietly, like dawn seen through the ruins of a sleepless night. When the illusions have all fallen, when every comfort has been unmasked as temporary, what remains is not nothingness, but awareness. Awareness is the first mercy life grants to those it has already broken. You no longer demand that things be otherwise. You simply see them as they are, and in that seeing, the fever of resistance begins to cool. This is not happiness. It is sobriety. Happiness depends on conditions. Sobriety survives without them. The one who sees clearly does not expect the world to be kind. He expects it to be itself. And in meeting it without expectation, he discovers a strange form of peace. A peace made not of answers, but of absence. When I first tasted this quiet, I mistook it for numbness. It felt as if feeling had died. But in truth, it was feeling refined. Emotion purified of desire. You will know you are approaching it. When joy no longer excites you, and sorrow no longer terrifies you. Not because you have turned to stone, but because you have learned that both are waves of the same sea. The sea moves, you remain. To endure solitude without bitterness, that is the test of the awakened soul. Most who walk alone grow proud or cold. They mistake detachment for superiority. But real detachment is humble, for it knows that the same will that torments you moves through all beings alike. Compassion grows out of that recognition, not sentimental pity, but the quiet understanding that everyone suffers under the same law. The beggar and the emperor share the same hunger. Only the menu differs. See this clearly, and hatred loses its meaning. The man who understands no longer blames. He merely perceives. This perception is not apathy. It is tenderness without illusion. There are moments, small, fragile, when the world, even in its cruelty, looks almost beautiful again. Not because it has changed, but because you have. The same street, the same faces, the same noise. Yet you look upon them as if from a great height. You no longer demand that they fulfill you. You watch, and in watching, you feel an inexplicable gentleness for all that suffers and pretends. This gentleness is not the goal. It is the byproduct of seeing. When you cease to struggle against reality, you begin to move with it, and movement without resistance becomes grace.